My name is Jennifer, and I am 45 years old and I'm a working mom, currently working as a nutritionist at a private daycare while raising my daughter, Mia. 5 years ago, I was overjoyed to finally conceive a child with my husband, Michael, who is 7 years younger than me, after 3 years of marriage. Because, since our wedding, my parents-in-law have consistently made hurtful remarks. My mother-in-law would say things like,
"Why did Michael marry an older woman like you? The fact that you were single until that age must mean something is wrong with you. Disgusting."
Meanwhile, my father-in-law commented,
"Even though you're newlyweds, there's no trace of innocence left. Having a wife like this old bag, it's no wonder our son might cheat."
Despite these hurtful words, my husband, Michael, would merely smile and ignore the situation when I was ridiculed by my parents-in-law in front of his relatives. He never stood up for me or reprimanded them. Amidst the gossip, some of his relatives scold Michael.
"How can you let your parents say such things? It's absurd. Isn't your wife suffering?"
At that moment, Michael lightly apologized.
"Sorry, I'll be more careful."
But on the way home in the car, he vented his frustration.
"Ugh, those people. Always meddling in other people's business. Jennifer being a hag is the truth, and just because my parents spoke the truth, I shouldn't be scolded too."
He directed his anger at me, additionally treated me as if I was beneath him, only surfaces within our family or at home. In contrast, when he's with colleagues from the medical equipment sales company where he worked, or with friends from his student days, or even in front of my parents and my friends, he never revealed this side of himself. In fact, he's known for being charming and kind, leading others to say things like,
"Your young, handsome, and kind husband is so enviable. How did you manage to marry such a wonderful husband? You must be incredibly lucky, Jennifer."
No one could imagine that this gentle, handsome Michael would wield unreasonable rules like a tyrant within our home. But perhaps it's not surprising. During the 6 months we dated, Michael never showed me this other side of himself. I met Michael when I was 36, and he was 29. At the time, I worked at the university-affiliated hospital, creating customized meal plans for each patient based on their symptoms. I focused particularly on nutrition care for adolescents who struggled with eating too much or too little. As part of a specialized team, I worked alongside doctors, nurses, and pharmacists. Despite the busy days, I felt fulfilled. However, seeing my friends and colleagues move into new life stages of marriage and childbirth made me feel anxious. The previous year, my 4 years younger brother had a shotgun wedding, and he and his wife moved into our family home. Consequently, I had to move out, which took a toll on my mental well-being. His wife, 12 years younger than me, was a sweet and adorable 24-year-old. She got along well with my parents, and there were no conflicts. She was impeccable, even calling me affectionately a Jenny. Even though I knew only too well that's my own selfishness, as my brother and his wife joyfully prepared for their baby, I felt increasingly left behind and isolated. Previously, I could forget this sense of exclusion when I returned home to my family after feeling it among friends or at work. However, my brother's marriage intensified my feelings of falling behind. In a vicious cycle, my negative emotions led to self-loathing. Eventually, I decided to become independent and moved out to live alone. But the excitement faded quickly. My solo life consisted of commuting between work and my apartment, deepening my loneliness. Then, at a singles party I was clearly invited just to make up the numbers, I met Michael. He was a sales representative who frequented the hospital where I worked. Although I knew his face and name, we had never spoken directly. In fact, I had unconsciously avoided him. Perhaps it was because he was young, handsome, and popular among nurses and other hospital staff. During the party, Michael inexplicably kept sitting next to me. Not only did he strike up conversations, but he also insisted on escorting me to a station when I declined the second round party. Upon hearing this, my inner thoughts weren't exactly joyous. I felt like saying, "I get it, you just want to leave because there are no women who meet your preference. But please don't use me as an excuse." as we left the venue and walked in silence. I'm fine here, I will grab a quick bite. I spotted a casual restaurant. I assumed Michael would roll his eyes and leave, but to my surprise, he followed me inside.
This place works. I was hungry too. The previous restaurant had fancy dishes, but they lacked the volume for sharing among that many people.
He smiled as he joined me. My rhythm was completely disrupted, and I thought this would be the end of it. But from the following week onwards, Michael consistently showed up at the nutrition management department where I worked, despite having no business there. Each time, he'd address me loudly enough for everyone to hear.
By the way, Jennifer, would you like to go on a date next time you have a day off? Even on a weekday it is fine. I'll take a day off to match your schedule.
At first, the colleagues around me who saw my completely indifferent attitude seemed to think it was a joke that went a little too far, and they laughed and scolded Michael. However, Michael denied it firmly in a soft tone, saying,
"Hey, how much do you not trust me? I'm just seriously trying to persuade you."
It seems that they were intimidated by Michael's attitude. Gradually, the looks and words directed towards me by my colleagues changed to things like,
"Can't you face it a little more seriously? Isn't it pitiful with that attitude?"
Despite my reluctance to engage with Michael, my department head eventually intervened. He reminded me that private matters should ideally remain private but also considered the workplace atmosphere. So, for the first time since that party, I agreed to meet Michael outside the hospital. I had every intention of declining again, but Michael's earnest demeanor swayed me. By the time we left the meeting spot, we had unwittingly become a couple. And from there, after 6 months of dating, we got married. Although my parents-in-law consistently treated me with a mocking attitude from the wedding greetings onward, Michael explained,
"You're probably bothered by my parents' behavior. I apologize. It seems they feel like their only son is being taken away."
His words, along with my parents' and my brother's genuine joy over my marriage, led me to believe that if I sincerely served my parents-in-law, they would eventually understand. Of course, it was all wishful thinking. The Michael I had imagined was kind turned out to be indecisive, and my parents-in-law were true monsters who did speak in English, but just couldn't communicate at all. Shortly after our marriage, Michael's true colors emerged. He didn't hide the reason he married me. In addition to the debts he had accumulated during his carefree student days, he had taken out loans due to reckless spending beyond his income as a working adult. Furthermore, his repeated loan delinquencies had put him on a blacklist, making it difficult for him to secure new car loans or obtain new credit cards. Just as he needed it, that party was scheduled to be held.
As I needed a substantial amount of money to repay, someone mentioned that a participant who had lived a frugal life at home without any significant hobbies would be attending. She must have saved up some money.
Michael thought that and approached me. No wonder he rushed into marriage and even insisted on future cohabitation with my parents-in-law.
I'm an only child, so we'll have to live together eventually.
Under the guise of renovating my parents-in-law's house, he convinced me to withdraw most of my savings. Although the savings were accumulated while living with my parents, parting with $40,000 was no small matter. Michael said to me as I hesitated,
"You know, even your younger brother and his wife moved in without any preparation, and you ended up leaving home. My parents' house is old, and it's not designed for 2 families. If you don't secure your own space, even if things go well with my parents initially, when disagreements or fights happen under the one roof, you won't have a place to rest in peace. To avoid that, if we renovate properly, cohabitation will work out."
And so, in the end, I paid a hefty sum of $40,000 in response to his persuasion. Our married life that began like this turned out to be hellish. With my $40,000, I managed to pay off Michael's debts and had plans for renovating his parents' house. However, his spending habit not only didn't improve, but actually worsened. Naturally, he contributed little to our living expenses, and I ended up working overtime and on weekends to fill the gaps. Furthermore, at that time, a baby boom occurred among the siblings of my parents-in-law, babies were born one after another, and my parents-in-law started urging me about having a child. Under the pretext of getting used to future cohabitation, they summoned me to their house on work-free weekends, assigning various household chores. Exhausted and perpetually fatigued, my health suffered, and conceiving a child remained elusive. My own hesitation about bearing a child with Michael was also a reality. But considering the timing and age, I didn't have much time. So, I underwent infertility treatments and was able to conceive about a month after my 40th birthday. However, when I shared the news of my pregnancy with Michael,
Wow, I never thought someone as old as you could get pregnant, even with advanced medical help.
he laughed heartily, disparaging me as an elderly pregnant woman, and eventually brought up divorce.
Whether you have that child or not, it's none of my concern.
He handed me divorce papers and left our apartment. The events of the following months are a blur in my memory. Both physically and mentally drained, I struggled through each day. On the day Michael left the apartment, my health was already deteriorating, and I didn't immediately track his whereabouts. I assumed he was in his parents' house, because when something inconvenient happened to him, he immediately sought refuge there. Besides, I figured that if I messaged or called Michael, he would ignore me. Moreover, I thought it best to let things settle and have a calm discussion later. But that was a mistake. 3 days after my health slightly improved, I visited my parents-in-law's house. To my surprise, a for sale sign had appeared. I hurriedly sent messages and made calls to my mother-in-law and father-in-law, but they either blocked me or didn't respond. As for Michael, he had cancelled his phone contract and changed his number, leaving me completely cut off. Back at the apartment, I rushed to Michael's room. His favorite suits, clothes, and accessories had vanished, outdated, worn-out attire, magazines, and furniture had been left. In the trash bin lay a crumpled ultrasound image of the baby I had given him that day. Seeing that, I collapsed, drained of all strength, and sat there in shock, staring at the hollow room. I remained in the apartment, barely eating or drinking, until my concerned colleagues, worried about my prolonged absence, came to check on me. Defeated by the incessant ringing of the intercom, I stumbled out to the entrance. My colleagues, who were taken aback by my disheveled appearance, promptly rushed me to the hospital, where I ended up being admitted. Meanwhile, one of my colleagues attempted to contact my husband, Michael, by calling his company. To their surprise, they were informed that he had suddenly submitted his resignation a week prior, leaving them equally perplexed. Reluctantly, they reached out to my parents, and they, along with my younger brother and his wife, hurried to my side. Naturally, my family was bewildered by the sudden turn of events. By the time I had received medical attention and slightly recovered, I decided to confide in my family about the situation and my pregnancy. My father and brother diligently investigated, only to discover that I had unknowingly divorced Michael. It seemed that during a previous argument over money to be given to his parents, Michael had coerced me into signing divorce papers, which he later submitted without my consent. Furthermore, my parents-in-law's house had been sold to a local real estate agency, as indicated by the sign. No one in the neighborhood knew where Michael had moved, and his former colleagues were equally clueless. Although they were upset with him for abruptly quitting without proper handover, his whereabouts remained unknown. Given the circumstances, it seemed as if Michael and his parents had secretly coordinated their disappearance. However, by that time, I had developed a desire to protect my baby, who was now moving inside my belly. For me, there was no need for such heartless individuals. And so, with the unwavering support of my parents and others, I gave birth to my daughter. Regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the twists and turns, and regardless of what kind of man Michael, the biological father, is, I named my daughter Mia so that she would feel that she was born wanted and cherished. Mia, a content and giggly child, brought immense joy to my life. Her smile motivated me to overcome any obstacle. Time flew by, and I work as a nutritionist at the private daycare Mia attends. In this daycare, the entire staff, including the director, is working devotedly for the children. They also take care of children with sickness or even with food allergies. I worked diligently, determined to contribute my best. However, fate had other plans. Recently, while picking up Mia from daycare, I unexpectedly encountered someone I never thought I'd see again. As I led Mia toward the exit, I noticed the daycare director engaged in conversation with a couple. They appeared to be the parents of a newcomer to the daycare. Ignoring them, assuming it was unrelated to my behind-the-scenes role, I nodded politely to the daycare director and attempted to walk past. But before I could, I heard a familiar voice.
Unbelievable. Even though you're an old hag, you ended up having that child after all. Disgusting, isn't it?
Stunned, I turned around. There stood Michael, cradling a child in fresh daycare attire, accompanied by a smirking young woman who seemed to be the child's mother. Whether by chance or not, it was a terrible situation. My body froze momentarily, but the sudden strength in my grip as I instinctively squeezed my daughter Mia's hand seemed to awaken me. Mia looked up at me and complained.
"What's wrong, Mom? My hand hurts."
That moment brought me back to reality. Deciding to ignore Michael and the woman accompanying him, I continued to hold Mia's hand and try to walk past them. However, Michael deliberately stepped in front of me and said,
"Ignoring me, huh? Well, that's understandable. After all, you must be leading a miserable life after being abandoned by me. Who would have thought you'd end up in this distant place?"
He smirked. Glancing at Mia, he added,
"She looks just like an old hag."
Then he and the woman burst into loud laughter. The lively atmosphere from moments ago, filled with parents and children, suddenly turned eerie and silent. Yet Michael remained oblivious. He continued to hurl hurtful words at Mia and me.
A child raised by a cleaning woman, how pitiful. The stench of poverty is oozing out.
As for me, when I thought, is this the first encounter between Mia and her biological father? I was filled with embarrassment and frustration, trembling uncontrollably, and unable to find the right words. My mind burned with anger. And then, unexpectedly,
According to the documents you submitted, your child is 4.5 years old. If that's the case, you were already pregnant before the divorce with Jennifer was finalized.
The calm yet resonant voice of the daycare director echoed in the room. Hearing this, I instinctively compared the child Michael was holding to Mia. Despite some physical differences, they appeared to be around the same age. Michael and the woman exchanged glances, momentarily taken aback by the daycare director's words. But they quickly regained their composure. Michael hurriedly explained,
"I can't believe it. I don't know what lies this woman has been feeding you, but after our divorce was finalized, Sarah and I met and got married. Our child was born."
Sarah, the woman, chimed in.
Exactly. She didn't want to be abandoned by my husband, so she stalked him even after the divorce. She even claimed that her child with another man was actually Michael's. It was quite a mess.
Sarah added mockingly. Michael continued.
She settled in this town, which is a distant place as far as you take the Amtrak, because she undoubtedly did something that made her unable to stay in her hometown. Don't be fooled.
The daycare director silenced them.
Enough.
Turning to the teachers and parents who had been observing, she said,
I have something to discuss with everyone. It includes information that the children shouldn't hear. If you don't mind, could you leave your children in our care for a moment?
The teachers promptly led the children to the playroom. Mia went along, but Michael and Sarah hesitated. However, a stern look from the daycare director convinced them to hand their child over to one of the teachers, and so, Michael and his wife, the daycare director, and over dozens of parents and staff remained. As the surrounding people encircled Michael and his wife, they seemed to notice the gazes directed at them.
My apologies for the delayed introduction. I am now serving as the administrative director of that prominent hospital where the doctor, who oversees the health examinations of the children here, is affiliated. You're all aware of my father-in-law, the hospital director's significant contributions to the local medical field, aren't you? With that in mind, we thought that having our own child attend this place would provide valuable insights for pediatric care. However, it seems to have caused quite a commotion.
He greeted the crowd. Then, pointing at me once more, he continued.
This troublesome woman, honestly. Yes, we were married for a time, but she couldn't conceive a child. She was wasteful and neglected my parents. Reluctantly, we divorced. She fabricated baseless accusations out of reverse resentment. She insisted that a child she had with another man was mine.
He exaggeratedly sighed. Standing beside him, Sarah nodded vigorously, seemingly in agreement. Perhaps they believed that being the administrative director and wife of a well-known hospital in the area would make everyone trust their words. However, things didn't unfold as they expected. The parents and staff continued to regard them with suspicion. Frustrated by the turn of events, Michael stepped closer to me.
Honestly, you should tell everyone that I'm a liar. Apologize.
His voice grew louder. Then, in a hushed whisper, he added.
You're working as a cleaning woman even in this place because you couldn't stay in your hometown. If you don't want to be kicked out from here too, just do as I say.
This man, even now, doesn't apologize. In fact, he doesn't think he did anything wrong. Thinking that, I lost my temper. However, at that moment, the person who stepped forward in front of me and said was the daycare director.
I've been listening all along to your constant stream of lies. To think that such a wicked man is the administrative director, the hospital is truly doomed.
The daycare director, usually gentle and rarely raising her voice, spoke with unwavering clarity. Sarah, not only defending her husband but also the hospital, stepped forward in front of the daycare director.
What audacity for a mere daycare director to act so high and mighty. Why would you defend this cleaning woman? Well, let me tell you, my dad is the hospital director. I will ensure that he resigns from his position as a daycare doctor and sue you for defamation. Let's see who'll be in trouble then.
Sarah's face twisted in a triumphant expression. However, the daycare director remained composed. She looked directly at Michael and Sarah.
Jennifer here is an indispensable nutritionist for the daycare. She's also my daughter's sister-in-law. So, I know very well about the whole situation with that scoundrel over there. If you want to accuse me of defamation, go ahead. I'll gladly handle that fight.
Yes, the daycare director was actually my sister-in-law's mother, and this daycare was run by my sister-in-law's family. When I gave birth to Mia while staying with my parents, my sister-in-law, as a senior mom, took care of us meticulously. Thanks to her, I could raise Mia with peace of mind. However, when Mia turned 1, I strongly desired independence and wanted to leave my parents' home. My sister-in-law, suspecting that my desire to move out was due to discomfort, suggested that she and my brother would move out together. I explained that my desire to leave home wasn't because of discomfort, it was the opposite. I felt too comfortable, fearing I'd become complacent. Moreover, if we stayed in our hometown, Mia would eventually learn about the circumstances of our divorce. That's why I wanted to leave. Of course, I intend to explain the whole situation to my daughter eventually, as far as I know. However, I worry that exaggerated rumors and funny lies might reach Mia's ears before that happens. I fear she might be bullied because of it. My sister-in-law, who had been thinking about this, then suggested that I work as the nutritionist responsible at the daycare run by her family. Initially, I was taken aback, but considering the benefits of working as a nutritionist while being a single parent, especially if the daycare where Mia attends is my workplace, in case of any trouble, I can promptly address it. But of course, during daycare events, I have to maintain the position of staff member and acknowledge certain constraints. Ultimately, I decided to rely on my sister-in-law's kindness. We settled into the apartment we recommended, and everyone who had been informed of the situation accepted us, myself and my daughter, quite normally. The daycare director, in particular, not only treated us as relatives but also offered advice as a seasoned working mother. She interacted with Mia just like her own grandchildren. The daycare director briefly explained this background to Michael and his wife. She, standing tall and fierce, declared,
"Ever since I heard from my daughter, I've wondered how I'd deal with such a despicable scoundrel if he ever appeared in front of me. It's like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Soon, I'll consult our legal advisor, so look forward to it."
With that proclamation, Michael and his wife, clutching their child, hastily left the daycare. 3 days later, Sarah's father, who is the hospital director, and the consulting lawyer arrived at the daycare director's office, with pale faces. The daycare director, as promised, had requested the daycare's legal advisor to terminate the medical contract between Sarah's father's hospital and the daycare. Additionally, she was preparing to file a defamation lawsuit against me, claiming child support for Mia, and seeking damages for adultery against both Michael and Sarah. Sarah's father seemed completely caught off guard by everything. What shocked him the most was the revelation that Sarah and Michael's marriage was an adulterous one. Although Sarah's parents were divorced, it turned out that the reason for their divorce was Sarah's biological mother's infidelity. Sarah's father had been deeply hurt by the betrayal and had raised Sarah single-handedly, determined to ensure she didn't resemble her unfaithful mother. When Sarah expressed her desire for a shotgun wedding with Michael, her father was initially taken aback. However, Michael's parents assured him that they were willing to move to this location and support their son despite the unconventional order of events. Based on their sincerity, he reluctantly agreed to the marriage. However, upon learning the truth about the recent events, Sarah's father was furious. Not only had he made enemies out of the influential director of the local daycare, but the negative reputation of his daughter and son-in-law, who held positions in the hospital, could significantly impact the hospital's pediatric and obstetrics departments. Sarah's father promised that Michael would lose his position as the hospital's administrator and work diligently under close supervision. He would also pay the appropriate child support in addition to the alimony for me. But even when the daycare director heard this, she was still sulking and said,
"Huh? There's no apology for defamation, is there?"
I couldn't help but laugh. According to what I heard afterward, Michael and Sarah and Michael's parents were now working tirelessly at a distant relative's elderly care facility. They are assigned tasks such as cleaning and laundry under the orders of Sarah's father. Additionally, the couple has been compelled to register on a part-time job app to repay the alimony for me Sarah's father had advanced on their behalf. Thankfully, Sarah's father had taken custody of their child, which was a relief. As for me, the divorce from Michael, which had been weighing on my mind, was now settled, leaving me with a sense of clarity and relief. Moving forward, I plan to focus even more on my work and live happily with Mia.